The English civil wars were a series of battles fought between those who supported Parliament, known as the Parliamentarians, and those who supported the king, known as Royalists. The conflict initially began when Charles I, the son of James I, began to royally mess up his government. He was an arrogant and autocratic leader, even dismissing Parliament 1 year due to their amount of complaints. However, they refused to leave and he did not call Parliament for another 11 years following the event. One of his most major mistakes was losing to the Spanish in battles with England, and eventually even the Scots were in rebellion. When he eventually called a Parliament out of desperation, he had no choice but to agree with their demands. The political reforms were quickly solved, and the problems only arose when it came to reform of religion. Those who supported the king were called the Royalists. Those who wanted to do away with the Anglican Church were known as the Independents, or more generally the Parliamentarians. Eventually Charles believed Parliament had gone too far and moved to arrest their leaders such as Henry Pym. Charles entered Parliament with a small force and a warrant, but those he sought out had already left. They had fled to London and they were protected by the Puritan loyalists. London was in rebellion, and in the summer of that year Parliament attempted to seize control of the English army. The king then raised his very own army, and the war had begun. As Parliament was now free of the king, many of its members tried to pass extremist motions, but were hindered by royalist sympathizers. The first real battle between the two forces occurred in October 1642 in the Battle of Edge Hill. Neither side won, similar to the Korean War, and proved that the two armies were of equal strength. A few months later, Parliament invited Charles to negotiate a peace. He refused, and both sides began to seize land and tried to acquire wealth to finance their armies. The king increasingly began to win battles, convincing him even more that a peace was not necessary. However, the war was not over. In June of 1645, Cromwell, a parliament leader, led his forces in a charge against the royalists. Charles fled and ran for a year, finally surrendering to the Scots in 1646. They handed him over to the English, and Charles I was now in captivity. Parliament put the king on trial and tried him for treason. It only took a few days before he was convicted of all charges. However, he spoke with such calm and dignity that even his enemies were impressed. He was beheaded before a silent yet large crowd on the 30th of January, 1649. Following our glorious king's death, Oliver Cromwell undisputedly rose as the leader of Parliament. He was not wealthy and had a rather unremarkable political career before he joined Parliament. He supported Protestantism and found Parliament to be a difficult body. He pushed for Parliament to disband in 1653, and when they refused he marched in with troops and cleared out the house. Seizing power, he was named the Protectorate, but refused the title of king. He did, however, name his son as his successor. His rule as Lord Protector was plagued with war and conflict with entities such as the Royalists and the Spanish. He did manage to hold back many of England's enemies, and allowed Puritans a place in the government. He died on the 3rd of September, 1658. While Oliver Cromwell was not the most benevolent or peaceful rulers, he is still honored today for his leadership in the English Civil War. In fact, the British later named a tank after him. The Cromwell tank in World War II was a fast and maneuverable death machine that was one of the most successful in the British line of tanks. Unfortunately, Cromwell's son Richard was not a particularly strong leader. He lost support within the year of inheriting the title of Lord Protector. In 1660, Charles II landed in England with a few hundred men. No one bothered to stop him as he marched to London and was crowned king. The original order of king and parliament was restored. During the 1700s, a new approach to power and governing arose. It was called enlightened despotism. Kings and queens under this order were fair and just rulers, willing to reform and improve the lives of their subjects. Another movement of the 18th century did not occur until it was drawing to a close. This trend was influenced by philosophers and the Enlightenment era. It was a new way to govern. Instead of an aristocracy, this movement suggested the use of democracy in government. Both the American and French revolutions are examples of this new thinking. One of the most successful rulers using the new thinkings of this era was Frederick the Great. He used new theories of government and invited Voltaire to his state. Frederick recognized that the government was for the people, but did not effectively set up the government to be by the people. However, his government was efficient and lacked corruption. He created many agencies to benefit his subjects and ended the use of torture. Other enlightened despots include Maria Theresa of Austria. She introduced many political reforms and government agencies. Her son was the Holy Roman Emperor, and he abolished serfdom and religious intolerance.